After what feels like months and months of speculation about who's the next Superman and Lois, we finally have our casting, and better yet, it's actually been confirmed by James Gunn, as opposed to us heavily speculating like we have been for the past couple months. So there's been a bunch of names on the table. You got people like David Corenswet, Emma Mackey, Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, my body double. But now we have our finalists. David Corenswet will be our Clark Kent / Superman, and Rachel Brosnahan will be our Lois Lane. I'm happy. I'm super ecstatic about this, and not just because Josh and I called this on the podcast a while back when these names were being floated around. I do find it interesting that reports were coming out of like different pairings were being sectioned off, and David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan were almost in like different playoff brackets, so to speak, go with the sports analogy. But that was kind of always my prevailing who I wanted to win this, not just because I think David Corenswet just looks like a younger, let's say the name now, Henry Cavill, but Henry Cavill, due to the lack of usage from the previous administration and just wanting to be more or less a clean slate, they're going with a new guy. But David Corenswet looks like he stepped out of a comic book and looks like he was born to play Superman. He looks fantastic. I'm not overly familiar with either of these actors' works. I know David Corenswet is most known for his appearance in the movie Pearl, which was the X prequel, and then he did something with Ryan Murphy, I believe, like a miniseries called Hollywood. Rachel Brosnahan is most known for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but looking at them, oh yeah, I see Superman and Lois Lane here. I'm really, really digging this casting. Now, if there's anybody I do, but I don't feel bad in this situation, it's Nicholas Hoult, as he's now both lost a Superman spot and a Batman spot, as apparently he auditioned for the Matt Reeves Batman, that the role eventually would go to Robert Pattinson. I gotta be honest though, Pattinson crushed it, and I never saw Nicholas Hoult really in that role. I think Pattinson was the better choice, and I never really bought him in any serious consideration for Superman for this. I actually, if anything, firmly believe that this means he could be our Lex instead, because a lot of times when these casting processes, if you don't get the main thing, the director will kind of keep you in mind for other roles. That happened with Batman Begins when Cillian Murphy originally auditioned for Batman. He got Scarecrow instead. But it also happened with Tom Hiddleston. He originally auditioned for the part of Thor in the MCU, but then Kenneth Branagh's like, nah, I think I see you as more of a Loki instead. And boy, was Kenneth Branagh right about that. So I actually kind of think Nicholas Hoult might still be staying on and being a Lex Luthor, which I would be totally down for. I really, really like Nicholas Hoult. I just saw him in Nicolas Cage's Renfield. It was kind of indifferent to the movie as a whole, but I really liked both Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult in that movie. I think they were both really, really fun. There are some other reports that I've seen that both the Skarsgård brothers are in consideration for Lex Luthor, which is kind of weird to me because both Alexander Skarsgård and Bill Skarsgård offer very wildly different, like, what they're kind of known for. Like, Alexander Skarsgård is like the charming, suave, uberly handsome guy. And Bill Skarsgård still is that, but he's more of the oddball type character, the Pennywise. Now he'll be the Crow at some point whenever that reboot comes along. He was great in John Wick 4, I'll say that. Either Skarsgård could be great as Lex Luthor. Now we can start ironing out the rest of the cast. You had to get Superman and Lois first, then the rest of the cast will follow. I dig this casting. But because it's me, I'm not overly familiar with their work, so I'm going to be deep diving into what they have to offer. I'll probably watch Pearl sometime in the next week or two just to kind of see. I've seen bits and pieces of interviews with David Corenswet, and he seems to have that good old boy vibe, or at least he can portray that in interviews. And I think Superman as a character is very much, yes, you have to be good at both being Clark and the Superman, but it's also how do you carry yourself outside of the limelight. It's one of the things that I think both Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill excelled at, of understanding that eyeballs are on you at all times when you are Superman and you're expected to be held to the certain bar. To a certain extent, I think it's also the same thing with Chris Evans as Captain America, of like kind of people expect a certain moral code from you as a person. And from what I've seen in interviews, David seems to have that. He seems like a good kid with a good head on his shoulders. I do think it's funny that in 2019, somebody asked him about his dream role. He's like, my pie in the sky role that I would love to be someday is Superman. I love Henry Cavill's more dark take, but if I ever did it, I'd want to be more the bright and optimistic version. I'm going, oh, you just manifested that into existence, because I firmly believe that's the direction we'll be taking with this new Superman. Is not like 180 degrees the opposite from Henry Cavill's, but definitely more of the traditional optimistic Superman. They've talked about, both Peter Safran and James Gunn have already talked about, he's going to be an outsider, but he's a character that still believes in truth, justice, in the American way, when goodness is not a often sought out commodity in the modern world. So that makes me super excited. Now we just got to fill out the rest of the cast. Who's our Perry White? Fingers crossed it's Michael Rooker, because it's a James Gunn movie. Perry White. Who's Jimmy Olsen? Because I need Jimmy Olsen. Who's Ma and Pa Kent? If we even have a Pa Kent. The Kents are incredibly important. I'm just excited either way. Now we're actually going to have some forward momentum on the casting news. Probably means we're not getting anything from Comic-Con for Superman. But now that we've got our two main leads, all the other dominoes can start falling into place, and I'm beyond excited. Well, what'd you guys think? Are you big fans of the casting? Or are you kind of about it? Do you think there's better options out there for Superman? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. And one quick reminder, at the end of this week, Thursday at 5 p.m., my biggest video to date. If you're a fan of comic book stories or Nightwing, you're going to want to check this one out. A few years back, I did a Pitching a Nightwing movie. Now we're doing Pitching a Nightwing movie 2. Nightwing is squaring off against Deathstroke like I teased last time, and boy, this one's a doozy, and I think you're gonna really, really dig it. But as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.